Hi, peeps. You're listening to She's My Cherry Pie, the baking podcast from the Cherry Bombe Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jessie Sheehan. I'm a baker, recipe developer, and the author of 4 baking books. Each Saturday, I'm hanging out with the sweetest bakers around and taking a deep dive into their signature bakes. My guest today is Chef Isabel Coss, the pastry and culinary whiz behind 2 buzzy restaurants in Washington, D.C. Isabel is the executive pastry chef of Lutèce, a French bistro, and executive chef of Pascual, a new modern Mexican spot in the district. The Mexico City native got her start at just 17 years old, working as a bread baker at Pujol, which some of you might know as one of the best restaurants in the world. In this episode, Isabel talks to me about growing up in Mexico with parents who loved art and music, why she likes to be adventurous with her food, and her love for traditional Mexican panaderias. She also shares her recipe for Buñuelos, fried dough fritters dusted in sugar and cinnamon. Isabel has such an infectious spirit, and I know you're going to love hearing from her. So stay tuned for our chat. If you'd like to follow along, you can find today's recipe at cherrybombe.com. Today's episode is presented by California prunes, the best kind of prunes out there. I am a big fan of California prunes for 2 reasons. They're a great addition to your pantry when it comes to smart snacking and baking. You probably already know that prunes are good for your gut. You might even know that prunes are also good for your bone health. But what you really need to know is that prunes are absolutely delicious in both sweet and savory dishes. But don't just take it from me. Here's what some of the country's top culinary experts have to say. Chef Bronwyn Wyatt of Bayou St. Cake says, prunes have an earthy, winey richness that pairs beautifully with the tart, fresh flavor of berries. Chef Kat Turner from Highly Likely in LA says, they are an incredibly versatile ingredient that strike a great balance between sweet and savory. They are incredibly sensual. Ana Castro from Acamaya in New Orleans says, prunes have a sultriness to them. They are very rich and like velvet. I like to use prune puree in my baked goods to give them great flavor and also to replace some of the sugar, eggs, or fat in the recipe. It's super easy to whip up. Just blend prunes and water together and voila! For recipe ideas and more, be sure to check out the California Prunes website at californiaprunes.org. Happy baking and happy snacking. I have big news for you. My new cookbook, Salty, Cheesy, Herby, Crispy, Snackable Bakes, will be available Tuesday, September 24th. This is my first savory baking book, and I'm so excited to share it with all of you. It features 100 easy-peasy baking recipes for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and of course, snacking. From sage butter scones to smash burger hand pies and tomato za'atar galette. You'll also find 6 of my essential savory baking hacks, including how to make my magic melted butter pie dough and the quickest and easiest caramelized onions. I just announced my cookbook tour, and tickets are on sale right now at cherrybombe.com. The launch party will take place in Manhattan on Tuesday, September 24th. Then I'm in San Francisco on Tuesday, October 8th, Chicago on Tuesday, October 15th, and Boston on Wednesday, October 23rd, and I can't wait to see you. Thank you to Kerrygold and King Arthur Flour for supporting my tour. You can also click the link in the show notes of this episode to pre-order the book now, or pick up a copy at your favorite local bookstore starting September 24th. I hope you love salty, cheesy, herby, crispy, snackable bakes as much as I loved writing it. Let's check in with today's guest. Isabel, so excited to have you on She's My Cherry Pie and to talk Buñuelos with you and so much more.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here.
So you are originally from Mexico City, and I know that when you were little, you wanted to be a ballerina. So can you tell us a little bit about dance? Because I imagine that sort of the discipline of ballet and dance must really feed you today as a pastry chef.
Yes, born and raised in Mexico City. I grew up there. All my family is still there. It's the city that shaped me, you know. Mexico City is a hard city, so you need it for life and for this industry and for like cooking, you know, in restaurants professionally, just as ballet. I wanted to study ballet because I actually wanted to study filming. That was the career I wanted, but there's a very famous school in Mexico that to enter, you need to already be proficient in another form of art. And I had already been doing ballet, so I went like professionally in ballet to try to get into this school. It was an amazing career, it's an amazing journey. I did it for many, many years. And I got accepted into the school. And the day I got accepted, I remember being like, I don't think I can continue doing this. I need to find a new path. But I had already been like introduced to arts, to music, to movement, to discipline. I went from ballet to soccer right away, like the opposite, you know? I cut my hair because I remember for ballet, you need to have like very long hair for your hair buns. First thing I did, I cut my hair on the mirror, you know? It was like reinventing myself type of moment at a very young age. But in all of that and all the changes of growing, art, movement, discipline stay with me. So I keep searching that type of feeling that dancing gives you, that movement. And I found it in a kitchen. I didn't know what to study. And that's when I jumped on it. And I felt it in a kitchen, you know. I'm like, wow, I'm back into my element.
I love that you have said that in Mexico City, everyone is always eating.
Yes.
So was food a big part of your life growing up? Were your parents cooks or?
My mom cooks, but just like the day-to-day feeding the family. Because I was in ballet, I literally had a diet until I was maybe like 15, you know. I was in a very strict diet. But my grandma cooks. My grandma's from, my dad's side is from Michoacan. She's an amazing cook, and my mother's mom is also an amazing cook. But even all the mothers, there's a lot of incredible food around all the time. I remember when I started trying in my revolution and in my reinventing, was trying a lot of food for the first time or experiencing again, you know, pambazos, tortas, the candies, all the candy stands in Mexico. I think they're so beautiful. The panaderias, all the chochitos and crust and conchas. So food is always around in Mexico. I always say, like, you stand up in any street and you look around, people have just things in their mouth, either a popsicle or like a taco or anything. I love that environment.
Was it really until you were 15, because you had this very disciplined diet due to being a ballerina, was it sort of after that you're, like when you started to play soccer maybe, that you were sort of more, as you said, revolutionized or reintroduced to all these foods that you hadn't eaten? Oh, I love that.
Like I knew the food I have tried and like I grew up with them, you know, it was stuff that I had tried, but suddenly it was like the freedom of, I want to try everything. And from there it comes like if I go to a taqueria, I want the tripe. And I want I wanted the head, I wanted the eyes, I wanted like the offals, because suddenly everything was available. It is good to have those type of experiences with food. I think that also happened to me when I moved to New York City when I was like 19. Same, you go to a deli shop, you go to the bodegas, like a chopped cheese sandwich. Wow, it's so good to go to a new place.
I want a chopped cheese sandwich right now.
Yes.
So I know that both of your parents, I think, were woodworkers?
My dad, yes.
Your dad.
My dad's family is
so like a family of creatives, yes?
Yes.
Of people, like you grew up in an environment of creativity.
Definitely. My mom pushes discipline. My dad pushes creativity. My dad is a very free soul. And he loves music, my mom too. So my house, there was always like someone playing an instrument. Every time I hear someone playing a guitar, that's when I feel at home. You know, that hits a chord because, yes, both my parents like art a lot. They're very specific with their art and their music especially.
We'll be right back. Peeps, have you heard the news? Cherry Bomb's first ever Jubilee Wine Country is happening in Napa Valley on October 26th and 27th. It'll be a weekend filled with great wine, winemakers, beautiful food, seasonal produce, conversation, connection, and California. Passes are now available. To learn more and snag a pass, visit cherrybomb.com. So your culinary career sort of started when you were only 17, when you dropped out of college and began work as a bread maker at the award-winning world-class Pujol. Did you go there because you suddenly realized you wanted a career in food, or did you go there just because you needed a job?
No.
How did that happen?
I was starting culinary career. So I was studying public relations in El Politécnico. And then on the night, I was studying cooking because my parents, they support me, but they support me. You know, I support you, but you still have to do that other thing that makes me feel good. It's a traditional Mexican, family. So they definitely like the idea of it, but they thought I was going to get tired of it. And I think a way to prove it wrong, it was like, I need to get myself in a kitchen, and the opportunity appeared. I went into the restaurant and I asked, can I please work here? And I kind of, please. And then they let me, and I ended up there. There were definitely girls in the kitchen. There were women in the kitchen. in Mexican cocinas, in the Mexican kitchens, there's always a position that I find super interesting that it's called the mayora. In all the positions, like chef de cuisine, whatever, sous chef, cook, like a dishwasher, there's a position for a mayora. It's reserved for a lady that has been working in the restaurant for a long time, that knows all the recipes, that works like a nurturer, that works like a protector. She checks every recipe. If you're feeling bad, you go with the mayora because you're like, hey, I do this. She will help you out. And there was a mayora. A respectful position in Mexico was a mayora.
That is fascinating, Isabel.
Fascinating.
And it's always a woman?
And it's always a woman. And I don't think all restaurants have it, but it's a position that exists in many, many restaurants. And it's usually someone that either maybe started working in another position, like in cooking, cleaning, prep, whatever, and people sees how good she is at cooking, because a lot of women in Mexico grew up doing it and they have that power, that they just cook so good. So they end up in those positions. Our mayora back then was City. She's incredible. She passed away, but I think, yes, the chef was a big influence, but you have this also position, of power and nurturing.
I love that. It's like if you think of the kitchen as the family, we have the chef father, the mayora mother.
Yes.
I love that.
And they're not functional families, kitchen,
right.
But they're really not.
Dysfunctional families.
They're very dysfunctional, but you aim to be functional. I think now we have better.
So you've said you sort of fell into the pastry kitchen, and I've also read that you ended up falling in love with sort of the freedom of the pastry department, and also there were better snacks.
There were better snacks in pastry. There's always better snacks. Everybody comes to you because they want to try something. There's freedom. There's freedom in pastry. You can take an ingredient and shape it to whatever you want. You can do so much with a piece of meat, but you can grab a strawberry and bend it, make it a twirl, make it an ice cream. The possibilities are, I think, endless on pastry.
I think when you were at Pujol, you were making bread. Can you tell us about the bread that you made?
It was a little more French back then. Back then, the restaurant has changed a lot. It was like many, many years ago. It was a very cool time. I think it was like the first time the restaurant made it to the 50 best list. We were all as a team trying to put that Mexican cuisine in the map. We didn't know how. And I think back then you still thought that to put our cuisine, you needed to do some European traditional stuff. So our bread reflected that. It was a French program. Like we had a baguette, but it was a bolillo. That is our savory. It was like a bolillo recipe, but we presented it in a baguette. So we still thought we needed to accommodate something.
Can you tell us what that recipe is that you just said?
Bolillo. Bolillo is a very hard shell, very soft crumb inside bread, savory. It's shaped like a little shoe. It's the classic shape for a torta, and it's usually eaten with tortas,
And you would turn it into a baguette shape?
You would turn it into a baguette shape, yes.
Yeah, I love that.
And we had like a seed bread, we had an egg yolk bread, like a brioche.
So I know that at one point you did consider going to CIA, but it was too expensive. So you learned in restaurants. You're a restaurant-trained chef.
Yes.
But also you've always had an obsession with learning things that you do not know and pushing yourself to know. That, I'm sure, played a role in the training sort of you gave yourself by always pushing yourself?
Definitely. Yeah, I moved to New York City because I wanted to start in CIA. And once I was in New York, I was like, well, this is unaffordable. Back then, I was very young. I was living alone in New York, and it seemed like an impossible task to take by myself.
How old were you?
19. I didn't know anybody in New York. I knew a friend. So I decided to take a job in a restaurant, and I started working in Pujol. And yeah, I think that mentality of wanting to learn the things that you don't know how to comes from a little of not affording things sometimes, a little not being able to get those products that you see. Like right now, I'm a little obsessed in mold making, just because at a point you want to buy something and you cannot have it or afford it. And then you realize, I also want to do things that don't exist right now. So how can you create that part, or how can you create that shape? It's a good mental state to be in.
Now, you've said that your desserts are inspired by local ingredients, by nostalgic childhood flavors, by storytelling. How do all of those elements manifest? How do we see them in your dessert style?
We were working on a dish. It's a millefeuille. I don't know. They always say, which dish represents you? Right now, we're working on a millefeuille. Instead of puff pastry, we replace it for plantain. So thin plantain chips that are cooked and then baked till crispy. And then we fill it with whipped Mexican crema, roasted plantain puree, and it's shaped like a millefeuille, but it still looks like a plantain. At the bottom, there's a sauce. It's a mole from Michoacan. It's my grandma's recipe. And on top of that, we top it with golden ocetra caviar. And just to get back at it, I think that's a way to explaining kind of where my head is at. There's technique, but there's a little of a story about me, with the mole. But then there's having fun and reshaping it in a new way. And then there's caviar, just because why not? Let's push it. And I think it's a fun dish. It's a beautiful dish. There's a technique. There's a story. But also there's the question and the story of the conversation of like, what's better? Is the caviar more valuable, or is the mole more valuable? And everybody would have a different answer. Mine's the mole, of course. It's my grandma's mole.
So before you opened Pascual, which is your newest venture and it is beloved by seemingly all of D.C., you knew that it would have a Mexican pastry program. And you've described Mexican pastry as not only fun, but I love this, like French pastries on steroids.
Yes.
Can you unpack that?
I think, when you see a surrealistic paint and you're like, what was happening here, And you see it and it's familiar and it's wild and you have to stare and like look at it. Walk into a panaderia, in a Mexican city traditional panaderia, and you're going to see and you're like, wait, what's happening here? I see it. It's familiar. I want to consume it. I feel challenged, but I also feel at home. What is this feeling, I think that's what Mexican pastry does.
I love that. And you've also said there's a playfulness in your pastry where we get with like the caviar and the plantain or the way you're describing Mexican bakeries. There's something playful there.
Life's short, it should evoke joy. Food should evoke joy because it does give me joy. So that's something I want to transmit.
And I had read, and I hope this is still happening, are you still thinking about doing Volcano. Yes.
Volcan. The whole story of Pascual, and it changes right now. I know we're talking a lot about Mexican food, but Pascual is supposed to be a reflection of a Mexico City restaurant. And I think when you're eating in Mexico City, you see around yourself, and it's a city surrounded by volcanoes. There's Popocatépetl, Isla Siguas, active volcanoes too. So we thought all that energy, we wanted to compare it to like a cafeteria or a panaderia. So yes, Volcan is still on the works. We wanted to open it sooner. We have just found kind of a bigger space within the restaurant.
And it'll be like a bakery cafe with a takeout window.
Yeah, like a bakery cafe, takeout window. It was going to be a takeout window. We just find that in the same space of the restaurant, we can take a little of the side. So it's actually going to become something bigger. So it's going to be better. Right now, we were going to do it on the side of the window. And it's just the restaurant's so busy that it doesn't give us the space to do it there anymore. So it has to grow into it something that is very exciting.
Mexican pastries, coffees, agua fresca, horchata.
Yes, in the morning, there's that, tradition in the morning, having a coffee, having a bread, having a carajillo. Like in Mexico, I usually have alcohol in the morning, a little spike of it. And it's good because it comes with coffee, I know here espresso martinis are only for dinner. No. Carajillos are 24-hour.
What's the alcohol in that?
Liquor 43. Liquor 43.
And then you put that in
coffee
your espresso.
And you shake it. So it's frothy and cold. And it wakes everybody else. You have a better day, And like that with like a roll of guava, you're set. So yeah, we want to do that.
So now let's talk about buñuelos. So first of all, tell us what they are and tell us about how you serve them at Pascual.
Buñuelo is a crunchy pastry. It's shaped like a rose. It comes from rosettes, from like those Danish pastries, fry, shape into stars or shape into rose. In Mexico, I grew up with them. My first experience, you can buy them into a package, pre-packaged from Bimbo. Buñuelos Bimbo. It sounds so funny. But yeah, that's how you get it when you're a kid and you crunch it, you add it to your milk, or you just enjoy it like at this crispy, crunchy pastry covered in sugar. I went to Mexico to get the mold for them. I had to go to Mercado de Jamaica. That is a giant market. I brought my husband in. He's from Boston, and I don't think he's ever been or seen something like that. It's literally, instead of a regular market, each street of the neighborhood becomes one section. So one street is just cooking stuff. The other street is just socks. The other street is just nuts. So it all changes. So we went to like that, looking specifically for this mold. So we found a couple ones. I get one that it's, like 20 inches. We had to compromise. I wanted to do that one for the restaurant, but it was definitely too big. So now we're doing like a little smaller, but still an extra large buñuelo. It's beautiful. It comes to the table and like it's good to sharing. I love when people share desserts. The whole dessert, one spoon is good. I like this dessert, no spoon, you know? You have to go in with your hands. So it's a big rosette, crispy rosette that we serve with a side of Mexican chocolate sauce and cajeta, that is caramelized goat's milk with sugar and cinnamon.
You guys kind of dust it with cinnamon sugar before you serve it. Is that traditional, the cinnamon sugar?
No, it's usually sugar. I like the cinnamon on it just because I love Mexican cinnamon. Mexican cinnamon is usually like Ceylon type of cinnamon. I think it's way stronger and it tastes completely different than what you're going to get in the store. We toast it in the grill. We have a nice wood grill. So we toast it on the grill to get some smoke, and then we add it to the buñuelo. It's not traditional, but I think for me it has that bridge to churros. That is what you usually get into a Mexican restaurant. Sometimes at the beginning you still think you need to like go French for people to accept it. I feel now you can play into how can I build those bridges that if someone tried it for the first time and had never seen something like a buñuelo, instead of being intimidating, there's those points where it's like, oh, it reminds me of this, and now I know what it is, and I love it.
I love that in the Washington Post review, the writer said the cinnamon-dusted buñuelo is the best ending. And it does seem like just the perfect ending to an incredible meal.
Yes.
In terms of the recipe, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make the dough or the batter. So we're going to whisk together. And I wonder, do you have a favorite kind of whisk or a brand of whisk?
No, just I love thin ones.
Yep.
The thin glove whisk, yeah.
So we're going to whisk some all-purpose flour. Is there a brand of flour that you like?
I like King Arthur.
Okay. We're going to whisk some all-purpose flour, some whole milk. Is the whole milk at room temperature at this point? Or does it not matter? Room temperature. But we can also use barista-grade oat milk instead. So I had a couple of questions. Is barista-grade different than the kind of oat milk we buy at the grocery store? Tell us what barista-grade is.
Yes, I added that oat milk just for like dairy allergies. Mm-hmm. I always try to make my recipes accommodate that. Barista-grade oat milk or almond milk, they come with xanthan gum. So when they do them, shearing some xanthan gum or maybe they shear in some guar gum, they definitely have some hydrocolloid in a small quantity that helps that when you do coffee, like when you had that thermal shock of hot coffee, your milk won't curdle.
Ah, yes. That
so
makes sense.
In this recipe, it definitely helps out just because we're about to fry it at a very high temp. So you don't want your milk to curdle.
So do you always have the batter with the oat milk and the batter with the whole milk available? So if a customer says,
No, right now we just have it with regular milk.
Okay. We're whisking together the flour, the milk, or the oat milk. We're going to have some vanilla. Do you have a favorite brand of vanilla?
Madagascar.
Okay. We're going to whisk in the vanilla, some cinnamon. Tell me about your favorite brand and your favorite flavor.
Ooh, I like Ceylon cinnamon.
Yum.
If the cinnamon looks pretty, it's not going to taste pretty. You know, like those perfect wood pieces, no, that doesn't taste like cinnamon.
So we'll put in some cinnamon. Oh, and I know you have some very strong opinions about cinnamon, like supermarket cinnamon. No, don't get supermarket cinnamon. Go to like a Mexican store or go to like a Latino or like an Indian store and look for some, or order from Amazon. I bet you can get some from Amazon. In your house, toast it. Do you buy it already ground or do you buy it in sticks?
No, I buy it in sticks.
You buy it in sticks. You toast the stick and then you grind it?
And then I grind that.
How do you toast the cinnamon stick? Just in a...
You can do it in the oven.
Frying pan?
Yeah, like you can do it in the oven. You can do it in the frying pan, but you're going to get some color of it.
Yeah.
That it's not bad. I've seen some croissants where they do like burn toasted cinnamon, you know, and then they turn like these black croissants and they look insane.
But you just put like the cinnamon sticks on a sheet pan and
sheet pan,
bake.
320 for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
Almost like toasting coconut.
Yeah, toasting coconut, just to like get those aromas out.
Oh, yum. And then you grind it.
And then you grind it. Also because it's going to help any humidity that's on your cinnamon will evaporate. So it makes the job easier in the blender.
For grinding. Oh, that's so interesting. And we're going to add some granulated sugar and some lemon zest. Tell me about why we're adding the lemon zest.
Just for some acidity, you know. I always like desserts have that sweet part of it, but I always like to incorporate some sour or acidity hidden in between, you know. Also aroma.
And then we'll add some eggs, which are also room temperature?
Yeah.
Okay. And we'll whisk all that together, and we'll whisk until it all resembles like pancake batter. So are a few lumps okay, or do you want it to be smooth?
No, we want it to be smooth. Okay.
And then we're going to transfer that to a large container that is deep enough so that we can dip our kind of plate-sized buñuelo mold in. Should we just picture sort of almost like a huge metal bowl?
You could picture it depends. I think it's going to be hard to find like a big buñuelo mold, but definitely you can order like rosette molds. They're going to come a little smaller. They're probably going to be like 4 inches. So find a container depending on your mold. You want a little bigger just so you have enough to like dip. You should be able to dip it at least 3/4 of the way.
So now I was hoping you could describe the mold, because I think I'm starting to understand it better. It's going to be hollow on one side and closed up on the other. So it's almost like we're going to put the mold into the batter eventually, and the mold fills up with batter.
Yes, exactly. The mold looks like, imagine kind of like those that you used to, I don't like to use this example, but you know what you mark a cow? Those
branding.
type of like a branding. It's kind of like a branding mold of like, or a stamp kind of mold. They usually come like cast iron or metal. Once you dip it into the batter, it will create that like shallow shape on the middle from the mold.
We have this bowl that our rosette will fit into, our mold. We're going to cover our batter and let it rest for about, and do you like to call it a dough or a batter?
I think it's a batter.
Okay, me too. Seems batter-ish.
Yeah, seems batter-ish.
We're going to cover and let the batter rest for like 30 minutes. Why are we resting it?
So you just have eggs, you have milk, flour, sugar, like everything needs to disperse, needs to seed. Salt usually doesn't dissolve completely. Sugar takes a little time. So resting batters with flour always help.
So now while the batter rests, we're going to heat some vegetable oil in a large pot. And so I had a couple of questions. Is there a brand or a type of vegetable oil that you like when you're frying?
I like blended oil. Usually has some like grapeseed and canola or grapeseed oil.
And then we're going to do this in a large pot. Is it just sort of like a big pot that you have, a restaurant supply?
Definitely, yeah, like a restaurant supply, a rondeau, or, a pot that you have at home that will
kind of heavy bottom.
Yeah, a heavy bottom, because you're frying oil, and oil is dangerous.
We want to heat the oil to 320 degrees. Is that a little bit low? I feel like usually...
That's a little bit low, but it's going to take some time. Usually you go to 320, 350 when you're trying to fry. It's going to take some time to set, so you don't want to go that hot on your mold.
So you want to start at 320, probably because it's in the restaurant. Are you able to keep that temperature at 320? I feel like at home when you're frying it...
Yes, you can definitely take it up a little bit. If you put something that you're frying, it doesn't start creating a sizzle, your oil is too cold.
Good to know.
Bring it up.
So we're going to warm the mold in the hot oil for 1 minute before we place it into the batter.
Yes.
How come we do that?
If we put the mold cold, none of the batter is going to attach to it. So we need it to be a little hot so it starts cooking. While you put it in the mixture, it's already cooking the mixture, so the mixture is attaching to the mold.
This is a question because I'm trying to visualize it. So the mold, when we place it into the bowl, the bottom of the mold is the solid part and the top is the part that's open, yes? So we dip it in and pull it up, and then the mold has been filled with the batter.
Yes.
Yay.
Exactly. Yeah, you got it.
Once we stick our rosette mold in, it fills with batter. Then we return the mold to the oil. And is the idea that we place the mold underneath the oil a little bit so that the buñuelo pops out?
No, you have to keep it like you hold it. All these rosette molds come with like a nice hold. They're usually like a wood base or like a nice plastic base at the end so you don't burn yourself. You're going to have to hold onto the oil, to let it sit for like a minute before you can remove the mold. The batter should come out really good. The mold is just helping to set the shape of it.
Yes.
And then you'll be able to pull it off and the shape will stay in the oil.
So you sort of set it on top of the oil and you'll probably visually, you can tell when it's getting set. And then does it almost start to rise out of the mold itself?
A little bit. That's why you want to feel it. When you dip your mold, you want to dip it at just 3/4 because it's going to grow a little. So it's going to keep setting into the shape. If you go above it, then taking it off is going to be weird to take it out of the mold. But if you just dip 3/4 of the batter, put it on the fried oil, you'll see it raise and you won't have trouble removing the mold from the shape.
Oil. I get it. So we're only filling our mold about 3/4 of the way full. We place it on top of the oil. We'll see the batter rise up and sort of fill the mold. And then will we kind of do a gesture like we almost press down on the mold a little and it pops.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So we're going to cook our buñuelo until they're light brown. Can you tell us how long that is, and do you flip them or?
I think depends on your oil by then. Sometimes it goes faster. Sometimes the stoves keep like better heat or the pot keeps like better heat. But you definitely want it to be crunchy.
Okay.
So you're going to take it to like a light golden or medium golden. You can flip it if you haven't been able to get stuff. So you will remove your metal mold and you could with like a spatula or like flip it to get some cooking oil inside of the shape because it's going to be shallow in the middle.
Right, because when you place it in the oil, the solid part of the tart shell or the rosette is on the top, and underneath is the hollow part.
Yes.
Got it. Do you have any tips for home bakers about trying to keep oil at temperature? I feel like once you put in a donut or a fritter or a buñuelo, the temperature drops.
I think like a good cast iron pot always helps. Like there's definitely pots that I like. I like Maiden. I feel their pots hold temperature very, very well. Start a little higher. Use a thermometer.
Yeah.
I think first times when you're frying with oil, it's good to keep a thermometer on the oil just so you know what's happening. It is good to just visually know. Instead of guessing, it is good to see what is happening inside your pot.
And when you make these at the restaurant, you're making large ones. Are you doing one at a time?
We do one at a time.
And do you fry them off to order?
No, we fry them ahead of time.
Okay.
So it's a pastry that is that you can prep ahead of time. You don't have to be frying.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yes. No, I usually make them even for a party. I will definitely do them before the party, early in the day, and they will hold all day. They even will hold till like next day.
That's probably so important when you're planning a menu at a restaurant.
Yes,
you
and never wants to
everything.
have. Yes, no, and starting having fry oil at the moment. Also, we fry it on an oil that is separated from savory food to avoid cross-contamination. So we do it ahead of time.
Yep. So now you're going to use a spider or a slotted spoon to remove the buñuelo from the oil. Can you just tell people what a spider is and where we could get one?
I actually don't know, and that's the name I know from restaurants, a spider. It's a big spoon or a big utensil that has a lot of little holes, and it helps you take the white of a broth when you're making a broth. A spider will help you remove things from water or hot water.
And great to scoop up your buñuelo because all the oil...
Great to scoop it because all the oil will stay down.
It's almost like a sieve, yes? Like it's like a strainer.
Yes, like a strainer with a handle.
Yeah.
A strainer with a handle.
Yep. And now we'll let our buñuelo cool on a tray lined with paper towels till they're room temperature.
Just to absorb
and we
any
can
extra
store them.
oil.
Now we're going to combine the granulated sugar and the cinnamon. I assume we whisk it together.
Yes, just whisk together.
And do you use the same Ceylon cinnamon that you use in the batter? Well, we have a big shallow dish, and then we'll toss the buñuelo in the cinnamon sugar.
Toss it in. Make sure the sugar covers all the sides.
Do you just use your hands, or is there a technique for doing it?
Yeah. No, just your hands. Make it sure it does.
And are they fragile? Like, are you afraid they're going to break?
No.
Okay.
No. They're sturdy.
I wondered if they're room temperature when you toss them in the cinnamon and sugar. I would think that if they were warm, it would stick better.
Yes, because you just still have some humidity from the oil and like the heat, but you can do it after.
When you're doing service, are the buñuelo already tossed in cinnamon sugar?
Yes.
Or do you do, they're already tossed?
Yeah, we pre-tossed in cinnamon sugar and we keep them warm.
Yep.
So when you get it, it's a little like,
Yummy. I know you serve it with both the chocolate sauce and cajeta. So to make the chocolate sauce, we're going to basically make like a water ganache. We're going to make a tea of water and brown sugar. Is it light or dark brown sugar?
Any can
Either
work.
one.
I like piloncillo, so dark brown.
We're going to make this tea of water, dark brown sugar, cinnamon, star anise. What's the flavor that the star anise will contribute?
For me, like star anise gives that holiday, aroma to it that I think it's really good.
And we're going to place all those ingredients on the stovetop in a pot and bring to a boil. Or just a simmer or boil?
Just to simmer.
Okay. Then we'll strain and pour that over the dark chocolate. Do you have a brand of chocolate that you like or a percentage?
I like Valrhona chocolate. I like Mexican chocolate. Usually we get some it's called Mayordomo in Oaxaca. We always buy some plaques from there. They like grind it to whatever you want. If you're ever there, you can go to the chocolate store and you're like, give me almonds or give me, don't put almonds, but give me sugar and throw me some cinnamon on it. And they'll grind fresh cocoa nibs from you. So when I'm over there in town, I usually buy like a lot amount with the ratios I like of sugar and cocoa.
I love it that this is a water-based ganache. I assume you do that because it's a much stronger flavor than if you had cream. Like all of the cinnamon and the star anise, all those flavors, and even the chocolate will really pop.
Definitely. You want the chocolate to pop. You don't want the water to... Water just works as a heat transfer and like to melt it. But yes, you don't want the milk to take away.
But you could infuse cream if you wanted to and just make it like a flavor.
It will create a richer sauce.
And then do you serve the chocolate sauce as room temperature or warm?
Warm, a little warm.
And then tell us about making the cajeta.
Oh, yes. So you think dulce de leche. Cajeta is the equivalent of dulce de leche. It's goat's milk that gets added sugar and the natural sugars of the milk with time and heat will reduce to create a caramel. And it's delicious. That's where we're getting the fatty from it, you know? So in this dish, you're serving that milk texture. It's coming from your cajeta. So the chocolate, you go with water.
I wanted you to just tell us about a couple of other recipes. Can you tell us about your arroz con leche?
Oh, yes. Arroz con leche, I usually make it with coconut milk. For me, arroz con leche has to cook first with water, like enough water, and then you add the same amount of water to milk and let it just absorb it. For me, the milk, I never heat it up. So I just cook it on the water, then I add the milk, shut it off. And for arroz con leche, I always like to add orange or mandarin, cinnamon too. I can't help it. I can't help cinnamon on Mexican desserts. I'm sorry. But not sorry.
And burnt vanilla, I read?
Burnt vanilla. Yeah, so all the vanilla beans,
Mm-hmm.
you usually scrape the bean out of the vanilla bean. We save them, we toast them until they're like hard and burnt,
Yeah.
and then we grind them.
Oh my gosh, so you grind the outside of the bean
Yes.
too?
So that's what we use for them. We use the outside of the bean.
Oh my gosh.
So we're not wasting any, and the flavor is incredible.
So you scrape out the middle and then you toast
Yes.
the outside.
But usually the middle, you use it for other recipes.
Yeah.
You're using,
Like a
you're using
custard
for-
or pudding or
ice cream,
Yeah.
whatever you have. You've been using in the restaurant. We always have the beans left at the end.
Oh, and then you
Sometimes
toast
you can put them in like alcohol to create your own extract, but we save the beans, toast them until they're toasty and burnt and have a good aroma.
What you grind up, could you use that in anything?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that sounds burnt.
It's so good.
When you say like burnt vanilla,
Burnt
it sounds so
vanilla.
like sexy.
Burnt
and
vanilla.
yummy. And then finally, just your Mexican chocolate cake, because I love chocolate cake so much.
Oh, yes. Desserts have changed a little, so I'm like going back at them. But I love this chocolate cake. It's a lot. Like, I don't know. For me, I think it's very hard for me to create, if I have to admit, it's hard for me to create chocolate desserts because I love chocolate, but I never crave chocolate. I crave mangoes, I crave limes, I crave other stuff. But I have to, you need to have a chocolate dessert in every restaurant. So when I do something with chocolate, I'm like, it's going to be chocolate. I never a little bit of chocolate. I go 100%, 120. I'm like, how can I put more chocolate? Because I know there's the guests that love the chocolate experience and they're going to appreciate that they're getting their chocolate tank fulfilled, So it's a dark chocolate. We add some Mexican chocolate too. We do like a 50-50 of like a dark, like a 64%, like a Jíbara or Araguani. Those are two types of brands or categories from Valrhona brand. I like those two. And then we melt that chocolate. We fold in eggs, sugar, and butter. And we bake it on a water bath, like a flan. And then we have to let it set. And that we serve with a crème anglaise and hoja santa oil. Hoja santa, it's a leaf, beautiful leaf from Oaxaca.
Kind of tastes like root beer or
Yes.
anise. Yeah.
Like it tastes like anise, root beer, like a little licorice. I love licorice.
Yeah.
So it tastes like licorice and anise.
Which goes so well with like
It goes well with
chocolate and
chocolate.
creme anglaise. Oh my
Yes. So
gosh.
just like a burnt vanilla creme anglaise
Yeah.
and the hoja santa, for some brightness. Fat on fat, I like it.
Yeah, please. Fat on fat and then like fried.
Yes.
Because fried is basically my favorite flavor.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today, Isabel. And I just want to say that you are my cherry pie.
You're my cherry pie. Mi cereza. Mi
Oh,
pie cereza. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. That's it for today's show. Thank you to California Prunes for supporting this episode. Follow She's My Cherry Pie on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. You can find today's recipe at cherrybomb.com, plus tickets and more information about my book tour, which kicks off on September 24th in Manhattan. She's My Cherry Pie is a production of the Cherry Bomb Podcast Network and is recorded at CityVox Studio in Manhattan. Our producers are Kerry Diamond, Catherine Baker, and Elizabeth Vogt. Our associate producer is Jenna Sadhu, and our content and partnerships manager is Londyn Crenshaw. Thank you so much for listening to She's My Cherry Pie, and happy baking!